Now we're recording. So this is Emily Agnew. This is my second HSP teleseminar, yay. It's December 12th, and this one's about dealing with holiday stress. Okay, so I was just going to screen share, well, it just said HSP teleseminar, so let's, so I wanted to say hello to you and thank those of you who actually came in person, and hello to those of you who are listening later on, which is going to be quite a few, I think. So, and several of you had questions, and I'll answer those a little bit later. But first, let's do the breathing meditation we did last time. Everyone loved it, so I would like to do that again. Just I want this to be, you know, a peaceful hour for us to have together, and we've got quite a bit of material to cover. So we'll just do a short meditation. I'm going to screen share with you to show you the image that I like to think of when I do this meditation. Okay. So there's our HSP support teleseminar, and here is this image of a beautiful gauzy scarf. You can see how if you were to throw such a scarf up in the air, it would be suspended for just a moment before coming down. So that's how we're gonna pause the breath at the top. So just close your eyes for a minute, and I'll do the same. If you want, you can turn off your video. That's up to you. Or maybe I will turn off my video. Actually, it's not letting me. Okay, so just shut your eyes and become aware of your breathing. You steady it if you can. And becoming aware of the way that as you breathe in, your chest expands a bit. And when you exhale, it goes back down again. And allowing yourself to direct the breath into your chest like that, so you're really aware of it going into the whole area surrounding your heart. And then let's add this pause. Again, just picturing that red scarf tossed in the air, and then there's that moment where it hangs. Just a moment, it's not long. Inhaling, letting your breath just suspend for a second, then exhaling. And inhaling and suspend. And exhale. And then in that moment of suspension at the top of the in-breath, notice how there's a stillness there. And in that stillness, see if you can feel, it's as if the breath touches something, like right around or behind your heart. That something that's touched there is your spirit, your soul. People use different words to mean that, but the chunk of you that is of the divine, that's beyond time, indestructible. You have this resource with you all the time, and we'll refer back to this today as we talk about dealing with holiday stress. Actually, at any moment you can, if you remember, you can breathe in and just touch this place in yourself. Kind of beyond the personality, and therefore beyond any of our HSP reactions that we have. It transcends those. It's like it reminds you who you are. Only the bigger you that's beyond your personality. You're just continuing to breathe like this for another minute. I'll be silent for a minute. And then when you're ready, you can open your eyes again and come back out. And you can unmute yourself if you like. And I'd just like to hear if there's something you could get out of today, what that might be. Did you have a sense of that, Judith?
What was the question?
Oh, just if there's something you could come away with today on this topic, you know, what might that be? If you have a question or...
Well, my question currently, I mean, it probably relates to holiday stress, but just a sort of a deep curiosity about how you work with both focusing and the highly sensitive trait.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So that may be something you may not choose to talk about right now, but that's why I'm here. I'm just here to learn.
Okay. But
Yeah.
you're curious about focusing experience. And
Well, I've been doing focusing for a little bit, but it's more the highly sensitive part of that.
mm-hmm.
And also the inner bonding. I'm kind of curious about how you put all that together. Okay. I know you've done videos on that, but I guess, anyway, I'll leave it there.
Okay. Were the videos helpful at all?
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
yeah.
But you just want to know more. Yeah, we'll cover quite a bit of HSP stuff here at the beginning, and then specifically kind of relating it to situations that can arise during the holidays. And then at the end, I'll just talk a bit about how I work and my offerings, and I'll fold in some information for you about your question. Okay.
To be honest, you know what my direct question is my sister is having difficulty at the moment, emotionally, psychologically, and I'm trying to get her interested in looking at your website. And I'm having a little hard time with that. It's not that she's resisting, it's just that she's so scattered at the moment that she just can't take it in.
Okay.
So I guess a highly sensitive sister dealing with another highly sensitive sister who's in trouble.
Oh, I see.
And the first highly sensitive sister gets triggered by the second highly sensitive person being in a bad state.
You get triggered by her.
Yeah.
Okay, gotcha. Okay.
But that may be totally outside of today.
Well, that's an advantage of there only being two people here. Customize things quite a bit. So yeah. So what I really would like to do, though, I'm going to hear from Joe, and then we're going to go through some specifics about the highly sensitive trait.
Yeah, absolutely.
Give you it'll give us a frame in which I can more meaningfully answer your questions.
No, that's fine. I appreciate that.
But I'm
Thanks.
hearing that sounds stressful. Yeah, that you want to help your sister, and that you get triggered by her upset, which that's very much a case
Yeah.
for us. So we'll talk about stuff that directly pertains to that.
Okay,
And
thanks.
thank you for telling me exactly what's going on. It
Yeah.
makes it
'Cause-
easier for me to be really helpful to you.
Yeah, thanks.
Good. That's one of the reasons why I'm doing these calls in this format, as opposed to just the one-to-many webinar format where no one really speaks unless I call on you and stuff. I really want to be able to interact and have what I say be of specific help. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. So
Thank you.
Joe, is there a particular question you'd like to see answered while we're here together today?
Yeah, hi. I mostly wanted to be introduced to you and your work. I try to ignore the holidays.
I didn't quite catch. Did you say you're interested in me and my work?
Yeah, I wanted to be introduced to you and your work. There's the primary reason to be on the call today. And then I said I ignore the holidays. And it's funny, I just got a text from my brother. He said, the receptionist is about to Merry Christmas me, and I'm not into it.
Oh, okay.
So I could relate to that. I don't celebrate Christmas, so it's kind of weird to watch the whole culture doing something I'm not a part of. But
Okay.
other than that, yeah, I'm just really interested in your work in general, and thought today would be a great introduction. Thank you.
Good. Okay. Well, the examples that I picked, because what I'm going to do is go through the specific. There's 4 things that all HSPs share, 4 aspects of the trait. We all come in all different shapes, sizes, etc. But there are 4 things we all have in common, and I'm going to share about those, and then tell a little story from my own life. It's kind of more family, oriented, not particularly holiday, but a little bit of holiday in there. So hopefully that won't feel too, that you won't get too overwhelmed with holidayness, Joe. Okay, so let me go back. I'm going to go back into screen share, at least for you, Judith. You'll be able to see it, and others who are watching. And Joe, for you, I'll try and describe what you would be seeing. Okay. All righty. So the first slide, Joe, has a picture of Matisse's famous cutout called Icarus. Icarus is the guy who flew too close to the sun and his wings melted. And I titled this slide, it's HSP Basics, and it's that self-knowledge is key. We need to know ourselves, and we need to know how to take care of ourselves. And Judith, as far as your sister goes, you may actually better be able to support her by just making sure she's getting some solid meals, that she's getting some sleep, like super basic, because we HSPs don't do well when the basics aren't in place. And that's, we can fly too close to the sun, in effect, and we melt down. Okay, so it really is important for us to know about the trait and to know ourselves and how the trait manifests in ourselves. It's a lifelong process. And it's important to know that the differences between highly sensitive people, of which I'm one, my partner happens to be one too, although we didn't figure that out until rather recently. He was a hockey player, scouted for pro, and somehow I don't think of an HSP being he wasn't an enforcer, but that just cracks me up. But anyway, so most people are non-sensitive, right? About 75 to 80% are not highly sensitive, but 15 to 20 of us are. And it's the same, let's see, I think about 30% of those are extroverts, and the remaining 70% of us are introverts. So there are quite a few extroverted HSPs. I happen to be an introverted HSP. But we have, so the slide here, we see a figure, and there's a few green arrows coming at him. So when you see the next slide, you'll know the difference. This is kind of the amount of stimulation and information that a non-HSP would take in from a given situation, okay? And when we look at the next slide, you'll see this is what an HSP takes in. So there's a lot more arrows coming at that body. We take in a lot more information from a given situation. That includes physical information, tactile, our sense of others' emotions, light, sound, smells. In every possible way, we take in more information. So that's called sensory sensitivity. Sometimes people they also include sensitivity to subtlety, because we may take in more subtle awarenesses. So a lot comes in, okay? So sensory sensitivity is a big aspect of being sensitive. And then we take all that came in and we really process it really deeply. So this slide, you can see that I drew a kind of a spiraling blue thing in the figure's brain, just to show going round and round, like really thinking about it, okay? So we would ponder, we reflect, digest, integrate, all those things. So that's the deep processing. It's the second thing, and then, whoops, I went one too far. And then when we do that, because we take in a lot and then we also think about it deeply, we have a tendency to respond with a lot of emotional intensity. Okay. So now the figure has a red heart in it that's got a lot coming out. Tried to visually depict that. Okay, so emotional intensity is the third thing. And then the fourth is we get over aroused, okay? Our system starts to overload. Our nervous system, it's all the zigzaggy lines, okay? And then when that first starts to happen, we may feel just like a little bit tense or a little off, a little buzzed. But if it goes too far, then it looks like this. Like this person looks like their hair is on fire. It's full-blown over-arousal, where we feel confused. Can I just ask you, Judith, in terms of viewing this, like for me, my Zoom windows are right in the middle of the slide and they're blocking some of the words. Is that true for you too?
The windows are off to the side. It's not blocking much.
Oh, good. So that's just for me. Okay. All right, good. Well,
move that yours over somehow. If you click on the top bar and just move it to the side.
Yeah, I think I'd have to escape for a sec and then maybe I'll do that because it's kind of annoying. Okay, good. Good. So yeah, so you feel confused, scattered, or stupid, you know what I mean? Like where you just can't think of words and stuff, or tense and shaky, or you may lose it. You kind of go into 2-year-old mode. Like you blow up, act out, get really cranky, or the other direction where you go to the numb end of things, shut down, go numb, and withdraw. Okay. Mm-hmm. So what I'm going to do is go back to the beginning of these. So the first one is sensory sensitivity, and I want to just give you a little story example of that from my life. Okay. And that's like, for example, we visited a close relative for almost a week, and I hadn't visited there before, so I didn't know that she uses these very, very strong smelling dryer sheets when she does her laundry. And the smell's so strong that even if you like lay down on the bed and your shirt rubbed on the sheets, it would smell like that all day. And I happen to have a very sensitive nose, so this was actually really, really hard for me. I had a headache the whole week. It affected my sleep because I would smell it in my sleep. And I wish I had a better ending to the story for you. That's something that I did. But in this case, I couldn't figure out what I could do to remedy the situation. Because even if I had asked her to wash the sheets, like I took clothes home from there, it took 3 or 4 washings before the smell came out. So it wouldn't have, and it would have upset her. So I ended up in that case, I just decided, okay, next time I will figure out what requests I can make. But for this time, I'm just going to get through. That's an example of the sensory sensitivity piece, And like also, my system is sensitive to the foods that I eat. So I used to just go home and just my digestion would be really unhappy the whole time I was home, like when I visit my parents, because they eat pretty well, but I eat a lot more vegetables than they do, for example. So when I went home recently, I just decided to take the bull by the horns, and I asked my mom if she'd buy me a chicken, and she did. And when I got there, I got some vegetables, and I just made a big pot of this chicken vegetable soup that I typically eat for lunch every day, and I made a bunch of extra vegetables. My dad thought I was insane. He said, "That's enough broccoli for 3 weeks." I said, "Don't worry, Dad, it'll be gone by tomorrow night." And it was. So I just took care of myself. I made what I needed, and I made sure to eat it, and my digestion was much, much happier. So I don't know, does either of you, are there ways that this sensory sensitivity shows up for you? Like hearing me describe those stories?
When you talked about the subtle sensitivity, when you use subtle, just speaking for myself personally, I often find in terms of getting a sense of the other person's emotions, I get it almost like a physical touch against my skin,
Mm-hmm.
especially if I sense that it's something negative,
Mm-hmm.
or especially if it's coming, when I sense it's coming towards me, that it's like getting kind of boofed
Yes.
by something, and that in itself is a little unsettling. I don't really know what to do with that, because I never know whether it's true unless I ask them, like check with them. Did you mean that to sound challenging, or did you mean that to? Are you angry at me? Something like that. So I'm just less wondering a lot.
Yes.
That's one example.
So I'm hearing that for you, you can experience energy coming from other people, almost like it's a physical impact on you, like it's physically touching your skin.
Especially if it's
Directed at you.
negative, yeah.
And especially if it's negative and or directed at you, right?
Yeah.
So this actually speaks to a couple of the questions that people submitted, that in case you're watching later. Like Pascal asked, if I feel too much, the energy and feelings of others, how do I get back to myself?
Yeah.
And you're addressing a really important question, was how do I even tell, like how do I know if it really was directed at me, or am I imagining it, or it was there but it wasn't to do with me? These are really good questions. So I would say that first of all, I doubt if you're ever making it up, right? The part that can be unclear is, was it meant to be directed at me? And oftentimes, especially if you're with someone who's a non-sensitive person, they may operate at a level of intensity that to them is nothing, but to you, it's as if they're shouting at you. Like my partner and I have had to work that out, because if he's upset, he raises his voice, and I'll say, "Don't shout at me." And he'll say, "I'm not shouting." Because he really isn't. I mean, he could get louder, but to me, it feels like almost like he's hitting me, like you said, with the physicality of the energy.
Yeah.
So one thing you can do is just check out, just say, "Wow, I've got a story going on that you're upset with me," and just want to check that out. Just so you're owning it, that it's that if so far it's something you're telling yourself, you don't know for sure. Or you can just say the exact truth, like, wow, when you say that, I'm noticing I feel like almost like a blow on my body. I'm just trying to check out what's happening here. So you're telling the exact truth about what, you know what I mean by the exact truth? Like just describing what's happening for you in the moment. But I think it's really, really important. I mean, if it's in a public situation where you're not going to see the person, you may not bother, right? But if it's any kind of an important relationship, it's really good to check out, because oftentimes people they don't realize how they're coming across to you, and you can find out that way.
Okay.
And Pascal's question about how do you get back to yourself if you're feeling too much, the energy of others is a really good question. Let me just think about that. How to get back to yourself. If he had been here, I would have asked him, like what practices does he normally do, right? That ground him, because if you're going to be in a family situation or a holiday situation or any situation where you're around people where things tend to get overwhelming, then whatever grounding practices you do, you want to make an extra commitment to do them. Like to make sure to get enough sleep, to make sure if you meditate, get up a little bit early before everyone else and meditate. If walking calms you, take a walk. Jacqueline Strickland, who's a wonderful HSP teacher, talks about, kind of the bathroom break is the ultimate, always available resource. You can just say you have to go to the bathroom and then go shut the door and, breathe. But the meditation breathing that we just did is a really, really wonderful resource because it's portable, it's ever accessible, and it's invisible. You can do it in front of people and they'll never know. So as far as getting back to yourself, you may need to seek solitude, but sometimes the breath on the spot will do it. And someone else who's not here, Laura asked, she said the frenetic energy at holidays bothers her. And I would say the same thing there, where you sort of have to decide, like, what can I do? Like, say, early in the morning, if you meditate or if you exercise or set some intent, how can you make yourself as sturdy as possible? And then take breaks. I don't know any other way around it, but just to take breaks if you need to. So Joe, if you have anything you want to add to this, you'll just speak up. But now we're going back over this again. So that was the sensory sensitivity and the deep processing where we ponder, reflect, and digest. I was thinking back over that and realizing that I used to spend large portions of my holidays at home lying on my back in the basement, reading Lord of the Rings or Gone with the Wind or some wonderful long book. And I realize now that was actually, it was a way of, when you're reading, when your mind's occupied like that, your conscious mind, it allows you to process things in the background, to just kind of let things settle and stuff. Any activity, also things like knitting or cooking, for some people exercising, where your mind is somewhat occupied with what you're doing. It allows a kind of background deep processing to go on that can be extremely relieving. And then there's also really conscious deep processing where you actually sit down and write, like a lot of us HSPs keep journals. You write or talk things through with a friend, although often the deep processing requires solitude. The conscious processing may also involve, the story that I thought of was back in 1995, my then husband and I traveled to Indiana to see my parents, my family for Christmas. And I was suspecting, because of the way I was responding to some foods and smells on the way to Bloomington, I thought that I might be pregnant. And I woke up Christmas morning and took the test, and sure enough, I was pregnant and nobody else was awake yet. So I just went and sat by myself for an hour, just kind of taking in the whole different feeling of me about to be a mother. So that's more of an example of like I consciously took space. I didn't go right away and wake up my then husband, or my parents. I just wanted to be able to be with it. So as you can see, like these strategies tend to involve solitude. So another big strategy for me, if I'm traveling and being with family and stuff, is to do my very, very best to have some place I can go to be alone. I mean, best of all is to have your own room, or a room if you have a partner or something that you can be quiet with. But having your own room is pretty huge. So questions about that, Joe or Judith? I'm just going to turn my little heater off while you think. Any questions?
I guess, well, what comes up for me is somehow finding a way to be able to be alone, or to have that feeling of self-containment when I'm with other people in a situation where like if I'm in a car. I have oh, it's a long story, but anyway, if I'm with people, and I start getting aroused, overstimulated, and I need to be alone, but I can't get myself away. I guess your suggestion to do the breathing, but somehow finding that safe container being with other people.
Yeah, how do you do it while being with? Well, that has certainly changed greatly for me over the years. And I would say that my practice of focusing and inner bonding has helped a lot. But also, I have a very sturdy meditation practice. I sit for an hour every morning because I just have such an active brain. I need all the help I can get, to stay calm. And for me, the act of sitting like that, really calming myself, kind of purifying my thoughts, and then setting a really strong intent for the day is key. So and Judith, I really do make an effort not to get myself into situations where I'm going to be out and about without recourse for long periods of time. Because I just know from experience, I'll take a separate car if need, right? But sometimes you are in a situation where or maybe you don't want to make that choice. You want to go with everyone else, but you want to be able to stay sturdy. So what I would do is really think through how you would like to be during the day and set a very strong intent. When you do that, when you've calmed yourself, centered yourself, and kind of connected to your spiritual essence, and especially write it down, it's very powerful. So you're looking ahead in your day and knowing you're going to be with these certain people all day and that you're likely to get overwhelmed. You just think through, well, how would I like to be? And then you just ask for help. Like ask your guidance for help. Say, just help me. I really want to stay contained in myself. I really want to not take it personally if other people seem to be being intense. I want to be able to relax and enjoy and just be with all this. And if you do that and then check in with yourself at the end of the day, it's really powerful. You'll be able to appreciate ways in which maybe you did better than you would have. And you'll see places like, oh, wow, I really kind of fell off the wagon in the afternoon. What happened with that? Oh, you know what? I was hungry and I didn't have any snacks in my purse. Sometimes it can be something that simple, right? But over time, then, if you watch yourself, you get better and better at knowing like what you need to have with you. And also just like, I'm just not as reactive as I used to be. In fact, like my next example that I want to share under the category of emotional intensity, that we respond with deep emotions. This is just something that happened like a month or so ago, and I was home. I've been back and forth from home a lot because my dad's been really sick. And my sister was there, and she actually asked me for help. She was sitting with her laptop, and she asked for help with a technical thing on her computer. And so I came over and I said, sure, I'll help you. And then as I stood there, she started checking her Facebook. I was just standing there answering Facebook posts while I was waiting. And so I went away a bit and then came back and said, would you like to do it now? And she got really impatient and sharp with me. And so I got super triggered. I was outraged. Like, what the heck? You asked me for help and then you go. So in that case, I fortunately had a place to go. I had the basement was my bedroom. And so I went downstairs and I kind of let Marshall Rosenberg, who invented nonviolent communication, calls it letting the jackal show fly, where I just let myself say the things that I didn't want to say to her. It wouldn't have helped, but just said, oh, what the heck, and I got that out of my system. And then I empathized with myself a bit and said, wow, this didn't feel good, and I kind of validated there's a part of me that I wonder if you have too, Judith, that if someone else gets sharp with me, I go right to a place that I must have done something wrong.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. And Joe, this may be of interest to you too, just in terms of the whole way I work, but this is, in my experience working with a lot of highly sensitive people, including my own inner work, this is a go-to strategy for a lot of us, because any child under stress plays to their strengths. And for us as HSPs, our strengths are we can really sense other people, their emotions and their moods really keenly. And we're also deep thinkers. So we go to a place of, oh, wow, mom's mad. I must have done something wrong, which perversely, it's an effort to empower yourself because it feels a little better. It's not great, but it feels better. If there's something wrong with me, then maybe I could fix it and things would be better. But it creates this core shame, and it's a very quick reaction that happens. You have to really, it takes mindfulness to catch it because it happens so fast for us to even realize that it's something we're telling ourselves, because it happens really, really fast. So I had to kind of validate for that part of me, like, hey, no, you're cool, we didn't do anything wrong. She's just in a snippy mood for some reason. And I also took loving adult action, a la inner bonding step 5, in the sense that I decided I was not going to offer again to help her with that. That if she wanted help, she could come ask me again. And I would say, and are we really doing it now? I wouldn't just put myself in that position again. Yeah. That's an example of a way that I handled, I had to validate the part of me that gets really scared that it's done something wrong. I had to give some voice, but in a private place, not to the person who upset me. I had to give voice to the angry thoughts so I could get underneath and figure out what the needs were. The needs were, I think, for kindness and also for consideration, Yeah. So, and then the last one, the over-arousal and overwhelm. This is one I remember a couple Thanksgivings ago. My parents were planning to come visit along with my sister for 4 days. And I started noticing a week before they were going to come stay with us. And I noticed I was getting totally overwhelmed, and they hadn't even gotten there yet. It was just the thought of them staying. And my parents are really wonderful, easy guests and everything. It was more, it's just for me, having people in our space. I just need to be able to go home and be quiet. And so I told my partner, I think I'd really like to get them an Airbnb. And we had to work that out. He was really upset because the way he was raised, one of the big ways you show love for family is you put them up in your house, even if you don't have room. So when he used to live out in Arizona, he had a 1-bedroom apartment. He had 2 grandparents and 2 parents all staying there at once in this tiny apartment, sleeping all over the floor, because that's just what you do, So he and I had to work that out. I finally said, sweetie, you are not going to like the partner you're going to be living with for 4 days if we don't get them a place. And so he finally said, okay. So we did. But that way I knew that I could have, that there would be an end to it. There'd be a point where everybody went back to the Airbnb and I could have quiet in the house. And nobody would be sleeping in my office, so I could come in my office if I needed quiet. Yeah. Mm-hmm. These are all kind of there's strategies in here for holiday kind of stuff. But so, the conclusion to all this, there's the overarousal, is that we are, I'm going to end my screen share here for a minute. We are environmentally susceptible, which you'll hear me say every time I do one of these. We are susceptible to our environment. And that's both the bad news and the good news. I mean, it means we get overwhelmed if we're around people. We take in others' emotions more. On the other hand, if we go get some peace and quiet, we can recover pretty quickly, So it's really around knowing yourself and knowing what kind of environment you need. Like if you need access to a room of your own while you're visiting, that's the single biggest thing I know of, is to have access to solitude. And then the other piece, Judith, is to make yourself sturdier and sturdier, which for me, the meditation helps. And then also learning how to not take what other people say personally. Like to realize that everything anybody, me or you or any of us, ever says is an expression of that person's feelings and needs in that moment. Even if I'm saying to you, you're so inconsiderate, how could you do that? It sounds like it's about you, but it's really me saying, I am feeling really stressed because you didn't remember to bring home the milk. And now we have no milk for breakfast tomorrow. And it's just, I'm saying it in the language of criticism and blame. Do you see what I mean? So that's another prescription if someone's coming at you in an intense way, is I offered you one earlier of just checking out what your story. Like if you say, oh, I'm getting the impression you're upset. You can also actually, if you have it to give, you can actually try and guess what it is that's bothering them. You can say, oh, you're upset because you really wish I had brought home the milk, just let them be that way. It's not easy to do, but especially for us and for sensitive people, oh my gosh, life is so much more fun. You're able to let other people's stuff be about them. It doesn't mean that we don't have responsibility for things we've done that upset others. We may have a part in the interaction, but we can deal with that without getting that extra awful zing that you get from telling yourself you've done something wrong. Yeah.
I want to interject here about validation. I appreciated you saying that about our needs. I have a situation where I need a housemaid, and I keep postponing it because I only have one bathroom, and I don't want to hear the other person using the bathroom in the house, and I keep criticizing myself, saying, oh, I should just get over it. But I really think it really disturbs me, so thanks.
Oh, yeah. Well, so are you saying that your room is situated near the bathroom, so if they were in there, you'd be able to hear them?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's not a small thing. And actually sometimes having your own, I know this is like a first world luxury. I happen to live in a house that has 2 bathrooms. It's a small house, but for whatever reason, they put a tiny shower in downstairs, and it's the best thing ever for me and my partner. My daughter's off at college, so she's not affecting things anymore, but it can really, that's the other thing, is for your own routine. Sometimes it's really nice just to be able to have your own space, like early in the morning and late at night. So I wouldn't discount that kind of thing, Sometimes that's one of the things we learn to do as sensitive kids often early on, is we other people may not understand, and they don't mean to be mean necessarily, but they make the universal human mistake, which is to just assume. We naturally tend to assume others are like us. We just, if I love, scrambled eggs, it's really hard for me to understand that how could you not like scrambled eggs? But, it's that way. And when we're young, often, if your people around you aren't sensitive, or if they're sensitive and don't know it and are feel ashamed of it, they'll question you. Why do you need that? Why do you care about that? That shouldn't bother you. Don't be so sensitive. My nickname was the Princess in the Pea in our household. Yeah. Which is kind of funny, because actually both my parents are highly sensitive, as it turns out. But the trait hadn't been identified back then, and so they didn't know it. Yeah. But yeah, validation is huge for us, for sensitive people. So yeah, so let's see. So I just what other questions have I not? Yeah, there was a question about the frenetic energy. The only thing I know to do about that is practical problem solving, to have a way out, to take breaks, to suggest other activities as an alternative that, that may not be as frenetic, or to just make yourself, if it's frenetic in your house at the holidays or whenever, and you want to be around the people and that's just how it is, then you just go in as resourced as you can. Just, get your sleep. Try and, if you do any kind of grounding or exercise practices, do those religiously, and then just be honest that you're dealing with this because you want to see the people, and that's the condition of being with them, so it's kind of a balance between acceptance and strategizing to try and make things easier. So, and somebody asked me, they said, I wish I could accept my family for who they are, which is exactly what I wish they would do for me. And if she were here, I was going to ask her to say a little bit more, like whether by accepting her family for who they are, whether she meant I wondered whether she might have a should, that she should like how they are. Because sometimes our family may treat us in ways that we really, really don't enjoy. So accepting how they are may actually mean not wanting to be around them all that much. You know, I'm much, much more accepting of my ex-husband now that I'm not living with him. I just could not live with him and accept him because we were so, so different in the way we dealt with things. It was just a constant conflict. So now it's like I can let him be him because we're not in the same house, you know. But I think and this comes back to the validation piece, Joe, that you were appreciating. The more accepting we are of ourselves, you know, the more we are able to validate our own way of being, and hey, this is just how I am, you know, like if I'm in a room with a loud TV for an hour, I just get completely overwhelmed. The more we have that kind of self-acceptance, the more we're able to accept others, you know, and just let them be where they're at, and then kind of in a more kind of compassionate and dispassionate way, just take what steps we need to take care of ourselves around others. So I would say that's a pretty big part of the work I do with quite a few clients is there's often these moments where people say, really, it's okay that I don't like this? And I'll say, well, yeah, it's like, it's validating that how you feel about things is okay. It's how you feel, and that it's okay not to like certain things, not to want to do certain things. Yeah. And then somebody asked me, how do you keep from blurting out things with family members who push your buttons? That's a good question. It sounds like in a case like that, if it happens all the time, it sounds like this must happen all the time. If she's worrying in advance, like she knows that. So Karen, this is your question in case you're listening later. I was going to ask you to give me an example, but I would say if you can do a kind of role play with yourself in advance and imagine the kind of thing the other person might say. And then you think through, okay, how do I normally respond? Like you said, blurting things out, whatever you would blurt. And then you can just pause and just say, okay, is there a way I'd rather be? Because you can actually kind of program yourself to respond differently. It takes the kind of intent I talked about earlier, where it'll help if you center yourself in some way in the morning. Meditation's great. And then set a really strong intent. Like if my brother says a sharp comment to me, I'm going to take a breath. It can be some tiny thing, like I'm going to take a breath before I let a word come out of my mouth, like where you have a plan. So you're not like a deer in the headlights. I think that being planful about it, you can't plan the content, but knowing like it's kind to anticipate that kind of thing's going to happen and not just to sort of hope that it won't. If it historically has, then it probably will. And you can decide, like think ahead of what could you do in the moment to just choose differently. So I think for me anyway, in those situations, about half of the bad feeling is feeling out of control. Half of it's the interchange, but the other half is feeling like I'm letting my buttons be pushed. And that doesn't feel good. So, yeah, and then there was one other question somebody asked in advance. Linda asked, how do you overcome resistance to meditating? Which is apropos, since I'm suggesting that meditation is a really great way to start your day and make you sturdier. I think that, Joe, this goes kind of to the heart of how I work. I'm not crazy about that word resistance. To me, if I say to myself, oh, I'm resisting this, I think of resistance as bad. So I would tend to translate that, and instead of calling myself resistant, I would say I am wanting to meditate. Like if I were Linda, I'd say I'm wanting to meditate, and something in me doesn't want to meditate. There's both a wanting and a not wanting. Okay, and right now the not wanting is winning. A not wanting, or sometimes there's a wanting something else. Like maybe I want to meditate, but the only time that I could really meditate is in the morning, and I have to be at work at 7. And there's just no way I'm getting up at 4 in order to have time, right? So we have to really look at what's the nature of the resistance. Is it that when I sit down, my mind is full of self-recriminating thoughts, so it's so painful? If that's the case, then then you may need to work on that, like to sit with the part of you that says mean things to you when you sit down. It may be that you have an inner critical voice that says, nothing's happening, I'm wasting my time. And maybe your life is really busy right now, and you really can't afford to waste your time. So all these are all addressable things, but it helps to know, like, what is it that's happening, and not to think of it as resistance, but to think of it as a part of you that has a really good reason. Like if you are really hard on yourself, if you have a lot of critical thoughts, then when you slow down and sit down, they're going to be right in your face, and that's painful. It's good information to know that those thoughts are there, and it's painful. So I hope that at least slightly answers that question. I would have to know more to help you specifically, with not wanting to meditate. I'd have to hear more about, what it is that goes on for you about the idea of meditating. Yeah. So yeah, so we're almost out of time. So I want to just talk a little bit about how I work, okay? So I'm going to share the screen again. There we go. Okay. What's happening? There we go. And so inner bonding, this is a slide that has the 6 steps of inner bonding on it, which are to be willing to feel your feelings and move into the intent to learn, dialogue with your inner selves, connect to your guidance, take action, and evaluate the action. So this is a very, very powerful process. And the way I work, I use inner bonding as a framework. And then I use focusing, which is the next slide. It's a way of accessing your embodied wisdom, kind of it includes your thoughts, but it goes underneath your thoughts. And for me, I found inner bonding to be tremendously powerful when I started doing it back in the early 2000s. And I also got stuck a lot in the process. And it felt like something was missing in the dialogue process. And when I found focusing, I realized I had found the missing piece. It's a way of going in and being with, kind of dialoguing, being with what's going on in you. That really works really well. It's got lots of smaller steps so you don't get stuck. And it answered all the questions I had about why am I having so much trouble, like connecting to my guidance? How do I know I'm not making this up? It answered so many questions, and it did for my clients too. So I combine those together. And I do one-to-one sessions. People usually come to me for some combination of anxiety, depression, or HSP overwhelm, or a kind of a general feeling like there's something wrong with them, which a lot of us HSPs have, unfortunately. So I do a lot of one-to-one work. And, this is kind of the most typical thing I hear from people is it seems to be a huge need that HSPs have, is to be met and to have someone get them. And so this is a kind of a typical thing that I hear from people. This person wrote, I'm very grateful for your presence, your care, your genuineness. I feel very met by you, perhaps more so than anyone I've worked with therapeutically in the past. I'm experiencing such disharmony and difficulty within my family, and I have very few people I can turn to for understanding and attunement. So it was nice for me to get that feedback. And it's interesting because, I'm not a therapist, and there's many, many wonderful therapists out there. But I think one of the reasons that people find me when they do is because of the HSP knowledge that I have. A surprising number of therapists don't know about the trait. And it's hugely validating to understand, oh, God, no wonder I respond to this way. And it just makes sense of so many things. So I think that's one of the things that people seem to appreciate about this work is the work itself, and then also the HSP piece of it. And I also do this inner listening intensive. That's for people who really, they've got some issues that are deep, they've groove deep in them, and they want some sustained support. This is my most intensive program, 1-to-1, takes about 6 to 7 months. I've written a whole lot of special materials for it. People do a lot of writing between sessions, reflecting, and I comment on their reflections. So that's a really cool program. And somebody who did that, said I was suffering from anxiety and depression about my work, my relationship, my parenting. I felt completely adrift. This program taught me a whole new way of looking at myself and my feelings, changed my outlook on life. I live in the present instead of always worrying about the past and future, and I've learned to trust myself again. There's more stories from people on the website, but that gives you kind of an idea. It should be, if it works, it should be a life-changing kind of a program. And then this is something that I do kind of on invitation, like when I have enough people. So if this is interesting to you, let me know. But I love to teach HSPs how to support other HSPs. And I do that by teaching focusing classes, where in my focusing classes, there's various places you can take focusing, online now and in the country, but I'm the only person who weaves it in with material about sensitivity, which just turned out to be really powerful. Like focusing is just and this is a class on how to do focusing in partnership, which once you learn how to do it, it's free, it's fantastic. I have 2 focusing partners who I focus with every week, and it's like free therapy. It's great. It's different than therapy in that you're 2 peers, but I can't recommend it highly enough. It's really great. And then I also do this inner bonding buddy course sometimes, which is to help people support each other in the inner bonding process. It can really help to have somebody else help you hold the space. So if those are of interest, to you, just email me. I just wait till I've got enough people collected, and then I schedule a class. And I put in this quotation because it gives you a sense of the effect that the classes have. And this is certainly true for me. This is why focusing is just, I love focusing. This person wrote, I've had a lot of anxiety that would spring up when I'm under stress and would keep me from going inside. But in each class and partnership, I was able to calm myself down. The partnering has a very leveling effect. The structure enables both people to do deep work and not lose that in a social relationship, which is huge for us. This is me talking, that because we HSPs tend to be so accommodating to others that, we need it. This gives you a structure in which you can stay in process and not feel like you have to chat. And then she added the fact that nobody is judging and we don't make any comments or suggestions to the other person. It builds up a trust and a safety. So that really eloquently describes what focusing partnership is like. And I, if I could have a wish to contribute to the planet, I would somehow get focusing partnership skills to every HSP. So, yeah. So that's my presentation for today. My website is www.luminoselistening.com, and you can subscribe there to my e-zine if you haven't already. That's the best way to find out about the dates of these things. And I write twice a month. I write an article or do a video specifically about some kind of HSP concerns, sometimes folding in focusing and inner bonding. So any final comment or question before we part for this evening? Is this helpful?
Thank you so much
Yeah.
I just want to thank you for sharing your information and your wisdom.
You're welcome. You're welcome. And if you want to write me an email just saying more about how it was helpful to you, that's super helpful. Since I'm just starting to do these, there's many different aspects that I could share. And so I always have this decision to make of what to share. So it's helpful for me to hear, what is helpful. So how about you, Judith?
Well, thank you very much for doing this, Emily. I really appreciate it.
Mm-hmm.
Unfortunately, I have to go. But I will. We're going to connect again, I'm sure.
Sounds good. Okay. Blessings to both.
Thank you very much.
Have a wonderful day. Thank you for coming.
Thank you. Thank you for being here.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.